just be Urza Scarlet with an eye patch. We now interrupt this news broadcast for a live exclusive from our reporter, a clone of me in a slightly different suit, who's on location in the Attack on Titan fan community in the aftermath of Chapter 139. Other Natalie-san, can you tell us what it's like over there?
Well, I think it's safe to say it's not Daijobu. Not Daijobu at all.
So, fans are not enjoying the final chapter?
Well, some are, but then remember that poll that said 50% of people were disappointed by the end of Game of Thrones, and how even though that implied that 50% of people weren't disappointed with it, nobody has ever actually met one of those people?
I see. So, to try to understand what has led to this reaction, can you talk us through what happens in the highly anticipated final chapter of Game of Titan?
Attack on Titan. Well, the chapter begins with Eren and Armin talking inside the paths, and this conversation took place the time when Armin and Annie were on a boat and they saw a bird.
So this is the Eren point of view part people have been expecting to see in the chapter. What does it reveal?
Well, for Eren, the past, present and future are all happening at once, and this made him think that he had to start the rumbling and distance himself from his friends so that later Armin and Mikasa would be the ones to kill him.
And he told Armin this when he was on the boat on his way to the battle.
Yeah, but he kinda gassed him so he wouldn't remember it happening until after Eren was dead.
So is this all Eren told Armin, the time he saw a bird on a boat?
Hell no. He also told him that it was him that directed Dina's Titan form towards his mother.
Oh, so one of the old theories that Eren killed his own mother to make his younger self more determined came true then?
No, he just did it because he had a feeling Bertholdt had to live so things could happen right in the future.
And tell me, how long has Eren known all of this? About how the battle will end and that he caused Carla's death?
It's implied he saw all of it when he touched Historia's hand at the end of Season 3.
So that really emotional scene when he asked Reiner why his mother had to die, it was before that?
Apparently, yes.
Does anything else happen in the paths? I imagine this scene can't go on for too long, where the chapter will need to wrap up what happens with Ymir and the spine centipede thing.
Oh, well, Ymir doesn't really appear in the chapter. Eren just explains to Armin that she did all of this stuff because she still loved King Fritz.
So the last 2,000 years in the story were because of Stockholm Syndrome?
Apparently that is what we are to think, yes.
But if Ymir only ever did what the king wanted, why did she free the pigs?
Unclear.
I see. So if Ymir doesn't appear in the chapter, how does her storyline get resolved?
Eren explained to Armin that only Mikasa could free Ymir from her Stockholm Syndrome, but that he didn't know how that would happen. So we can assume that was why Ymir was smiling after watching Mikasa kissing Eren's decapitated head. Because when Armin comes back from his flashback, all of the Titan powers are gone, and everyone who got Titanized has turned back to normal.
So what happened to Wormcoon? Where it was set up to be the embodiment of life and the desire to survive, I imagine it was a tough job for whoever eventually destroyed it.
Possibly. It kind of disappeared at some point. It's just kind of gone after Armin comes round.
I see. So, after Armin has heard all of this exposition from Eren, the whole plot with the organism and Ymir has just resolved itself. Some might say that's a bit underwhelming.
Some might. Many are saying that. Still, there are some nice reunions, and all of the Alliance are super happy they didn't die. Even Falco managed to land on the beach safely, rather than losing his Titan powers in mid-air and plummeting to his death. There's even a nice bit where Levi sees Hanji and his other dead friends, and Connie and John see Sasha smiling at them.
Is that just a nice symbolic hallucination to show that all of the people who died leading up to this outcome are generally happy with it, even though it kind of seems like almost any other option would have led to a better result than Eren's plan to rumble most of the world, until Mikasa killed him with just the right sentiment to teach Ymir whatever nebulous lesson it was she needed to learn?
It doesn't really seem like a hallucination, since Connie and Jean see Sasha together.
So, is it a vision from the paths? Does that mean that when Hanji died and had that little afterlife scene, that was in the paths too?
Unclear.
And aren't the paths going to be gone now Ymir has taken her influence away? Does that mean the ghosts of all of those characters are in limbo now? What about when the Eldians who are alive now die? Where will they go?
Well, we're probably not really supposed to overthink the dead character cameos. It's just a nice moment, you know? Anyway, after that, the Marleyans want to do a blood test to tell if the Eldians really have lost the ability to turn into Titans.
Is that something a blood test could prove?
Unclear, but Armin tells them that he killed Eren, so they believe him and leave them alone.
Didn't Mikasa kill Eren, though?
Well, technically yes, but the important thing is that the Marleyans, who thought that if they lived to see tomorrow they'd do things differently, immediately pointed guns at the Eldians as soon as the rumbling was over.
So Eren's gambit of making himself everybody's enemy didn't actually bring about peace then?
Actually, no. When we see things back on Parody after a time skip, they've had to form an army, mostly out of the Jaegerists, because the rest of the world is at war with them.
Could it be argued then that there was no point to the rumbling arc whatsoever?
It certainly could be, though it did bring about the end of Ymir and Wormcoon.
Which happened off screen. What else has been going on in Parody during this time skip then?
Well, Historia married Farmercoon and they raised their child. And she wrote a letter to all of the others, which Reiner sniffed.
So Historia's baby?
Is just a normal baby she had with an unnamed character, yes. Seems like we maybe overthought that plotline just a tiny bit.
But the final panel, the man with the baby, that was nothing to do with Historia's child?
Nope. And it also wasn't the final panel in the end. It was just a bit of the memories Eren saw when he, saw all of everything. It was Grisha holding baby Eren.
Oh, so Historia?
Well, that's one of the things people here are divided about. A lot of people are saying Historia was as forgotten by the plot as, say, Eren having the power of the Warhammer Titan. Though really, it's at least a good thing Parody does have someone in charge, what with all of the wars they're in now.
So if the final panel isn't the man and the baby, what is it instead?
Mikasa shouting at a bird.
I see. I can see why Isayama may have preferred to give us a preview of the baby panel. It seems like any theories we may have had about the final panel of... Sorry, did you say Mikasa shouting at a bird?
Yes, I mean, really she's thanking the bird for helping her put on her scarf, but it's kind of flying away, so I imagine she is shouting, yes.
So the ending is what? That Mikasa is a Disney princess now? Her little forest friends help her dress?
Oh, no, the bird is Eren. It seemed like it might just be symbolic, a bird symbolising freedom, but given the bird Armin and Annie saw, and the fact the bird wrapped the scarf around Mikasa, just like Eren used to, either that bird is very proactive about how symbolic it is, or it's actually supposed to be Eren.
So Eren was reincarnated as a bird?
Since the bird was there in the boat scene before Eren died, I guess it's more like when he was leaving the paths to tamper with the past or see things that had happened, maybe he appeared to other people as a bird.
But didn't he tell Armin he didn't know what would happen after he died? It seems like he could only see the past, present and future of the attack Titan. So after he died, and Ymir removed the Titan powers from the world, Eren shouldn't be able to see or interact with the future after that, right? How could he appear to Mikasa after the time skip?
I guess you're right. Okay, so Eren was reincarnated as a bird, then.
Still, it seems like Mikasa got a proper ending then, even if it was represented by the baffling bird thing.
Yeah, though she'll never know how Eren truly felt about her because he made Armin promise not to tell her.
But Eren did love her.
It turns out that yes, he did, and in a much more simpy and pathetic way than anybody had imagined, which meant that even the people who were really hoping for a romantic ending between Eren and Mikasa are on the whole a bit put off by it.
Really?
Yeah, Eren told Armin that he couldn't bear the idea of Mikasa moving on and being with another man, and it was tearing him apart that he couldn't live and be with her.
That sounds suitably tragic for a bittersweet ending.
And then Armin says that they can probably find a way that Eren can live. I mean, the fan theorists came up with dozens of them, so it wouldn't have been beyond him. But Eren says that he's sinned too much to deserve to live.
So he doesn't want Mikasa to be with someone other than him, and he doesn't want to even look for a way he can live and be with her himself. Seems like he really wants her to be sad and lonely.
Yeah, and he knows this makes him a bit of a dick, so he tells Armin not to tell her.
So then the last thing he said to her outside of dreams and weird bird appearances was that he'd always hated her.
Yeah, it would have been quite the tragic love story if it wasn't for the fact that there isn't really any good reason why Eren, did any of it.
And that's it then. That's the chapter.
The most important parts, yes. There were some other things in there too. Connie's mother went back to normal, off screen though. Levi lost an eye and got pushed around in a wheelchair by Gabby and Falco, and all of the Alliance members are now ambassadors for parody. Except Mikasa, because it seems like she's fully occupied with the whole being sad by Eren's head grave for reasons that could have been completely avoided. Oh, and while everyone else is on the boat to the mainland, they see a bird.
It's not unusual to see a bird at sea. I mean, they can't all be Eren, can they?
It's definitely Eren again. It drops a feather down and Armin catches it, and then he looks up with the same realization that Mikasa had.
Can birds in flight just shed feathers at will as gestures to friends from their past lives?
They apparently can when they're Eren.
So, clearly the fan response to the chapter hasn't been enthusiastic. But what do you really think about it?
In all honesty, I do think it's underwhelming. The Code Geass gambit was done far better in Code Geass because that kind of planning suited Lelouch's character. But Eren was established not as some kind of strategic genius, but as someone who was all about freedom. And he didn't even really represent that in the end either. He just fulfilled the destiny he'd already seen because he felt like that's what had to happen. He wasn't willing to try to change that, even to stop his mother being eaten, let alone to avoid the deaths caused by the rumbling and the pain he caused his closest friends, which makes it seem like he wasn't free at all. He managed to engineer the situation where Ymir could learn to let go of her bullshit reason for perpetuating all of this and remove Titan powers in the Curse of Ymir from the world, but Eldia is still under attack, and now they don't even have Titan powers to defend themselves. They're just sitting on their resource-rich island with their population of people who've only even known about the kind of technology the rest of the world has for 6 years, and no amount of determination from the Queen is gonna make them feel less like sitting ducks. Given other nations were shown to be technologically around about the 1920s, I can't help but think parody probably only has a couple of decades before someone nukes it. And so while Isayama did avoid an unrealistic instant world peace type ending, at the same time, the future Eren created doesn't seem like enough of a solution to anybody's problems to have been worth it. And that makes it feel even more like Eren was just kinda doing stuff because yes, the anticlimactic ending to the spine creature, Ymir, and even to the people being titanized in just the previous chapter felt disappointing, though it did at least mostly make sense. And the 3 years later part did at least tie up to some extent what most of the cast were going to be doing after the ending. So while it could have been more interesting, I don't think it was a terrible way to close things off for those characters. But I do really wish Isayama had just dialed back the bird thing, so it was just a symbolic thing. A bird just reminding Mikasa and Armin of Eren, who supposedly sought freedom, and making them have a little reflective moment thinking about him, rather than the bird interacting with them in a way that makes it seem like the bird actually is Eren, and then them looking at it with this wonder like they've just realised that's what's going on. That just seemed kind of silly.
But the real question is this really, as many are saying, just as bad as Game of Thrones?
No, I don't think it is. I think a more appropriate comparison to Game of Thrones Season 8 would be more what was done with The Promised Neverland Season 2, or Tokyo Ghoul in the anime. Chapter 139 may feel just as disappointing right now as Game of Thrones Season 8 did back then, but I think once we've got used to the fact that Attack on Titan has an underwhelming ending, it's going to feel more just like, well, the vast majority of good anime and manga series, where the ending just didn't live up to the best parts of the story. This is something people joke about with anime all the time, that the endings usually are mediocre, no matter how good the rest of it was, and there are probably plenty of reasons for that can make for a whole special report on their own. There are exceptions, but it seems like Attack on Titan, unfortunately, isn't going to be one of them. I don't think it's a terrible ending at the level where it makes you regret ever having cared about the series, or reluctant to recommend starting it to anybody, or to get into any future projects the author works on. I also think that it's possible that people reading the manga in the future, who can binge read the chapters right the way through to the end, without the wait, the hype, and the time in between spent theorising and hoping for big exciting twists, may well think the ending is fine. Not great, but fine. Those month-long waits between the chapters really do make us build things up in our minds and get a different sense of the importance of every small detail, whether it's actually going to turn out to be important in the end or not. And I think it would be quite a different experience for someone to just burn through the stories in a few days than we've all had. And I can really just see people reading this manga in a few months' time, thinking that the ending must be spectacularly bad because of the reaction now, only to arrive at it and kind of wonder what all the fuss is about.
So you don't think people should be burning their manga volumes and giving up on anime for good then?
Of course not.
Why have you changed?
Oh, I heard a bunch of people saying we were going to go and sit in Isayama's onsen.
I don't think that's what they said. And on that bombshell, this has been a WeBC News special broadcast. Please subscribe for more anime news, analysis and theories with me, Natalie X Hunter.